All right, so as you can see, we've chosen a little bit of a strange camera angle here, and today we had to do it this way so we could actually fit our special guest host into the shot with me. Of course, as you see behind me, this is a gigantic ent. This is a real ent, not real, actual wood. This is a real ent, and he's going to hold this pose very still for the entirety of this segment because he wants to show off his dabbing skills. It's also very befitting, to have this particular special guest because, of course, what everybody associates ents with. As a matter of fact, most people actually think that they're fictional because of this, but what most people associate ents with is J.R.R. Tolkien, the famous British author. And of course, that's a great segue into the next topic, because I'm actually going to talk about the passing of Queen Elizabeth and some of the shenanigans around the British royal family right now. Now, the British royal family is kind of a very interesting institution. Not so much just because of its history, although it has a very long and interesting history, as most royal families in the world do, but in particular because this is one that still does manage to wield, quite a bit of official power, in the world. But we're kind of still trying to find out the place that this institution does play in the world at all at this time. And so, of course, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, this just at the end of this last month, was a it felt so much more unexpected than really it should have been, given the fact that she was 96 years old. But what was even more unexpected than that to me was some of the nonsense that would come out of that, especially on social media. I have heard said that Twitter is a cult. It might be, but it is also a cesspool, and there's no getting around that. And so, as it so happens, this was a great opportunity to find out just how divisive, once and for all, to know for absolutely certain exactly how divisive Meghan Markle is as a person. And so, of course, famously, I think it was about a year ago, maybe more than that, she had her famous interview on Oprah, where she and Prince Harry, her husband, sat down and basically rolled on the royal family and made all sorts of allegations of racism against them. Said that in particular, when their son Archie was born, there were questions about whether or not Archie was going to be able to inherit royal title because of his race and things like that. And so eventually, they wound up, officially leaving the royal family, which is sort of a very odd thing to do, to leave one's family. And so, of course, that was a very trying thing for the royal family, and it had to have been especially for the Queen. And so now, all of this time later, the Queen passed away. I think it is a reasonable question to ask whether or not she would have passed away any later if it wasn't for the kind of emotional turmoil that this whole thing must have had on her. But I'm not a medical doctor. We don't have the answers to that particular question. But I think one thing that we could say for certain is that Harry most likely could have at least had more time with his grandmother, before she passed away, if it wasn't for this whole thing that I think that a lot of people found to be, let's say dubious. And it does seem like Meghan Markle, she is definitely political. And she is definitely a what you would call a social justice advocate. I think the phrase social justice warrior is so overdone. But it's not really hard to understand exactly why it is that she would why she would go in such a direction in life, all things considered. But the way that this whole thing has come out during this period of time, it seems like we suddenly have these dueling hashtags on Twitter that are basically targeting the wives of each of the two of the princes. I mean, of course, Princess Diana's two sons, William and Harry. And so we have these dueling hashtags that constantly come out that seem to target each of their wives, kind of pitting them against each other like they're enemies. And so much of it just seems so, so contrived, and there's so much bullshit surrounding it. And so I believe the first thing that we really saw, the first wave of this kind of came out, and it was clearly against Meghan Markle. And there were people that were angry that she would dare show up, anywhere near the Queen's funeral, anywhere near any of this stuff. And it was almost like she and Prince Harry, they were supposed to go into banishment forever. So there was this trending hashtag, "Go home, Meghan Markle," "Meghan go home," various variations of that. And that was really disappointing to see, because, quite frankly, whatever a person might think of whatever went on around that family, at the end of the day, they're not just, a public institution. They are a family of people, and they do have the right, to settle whatever grievances they may have in whatever manner they see fitting, within reasonable limits. I mean, of course, we don't want anybody to say, we don't want any King Henry-esque situations to unfold around the royal family. Yeah, that would be pretty awful. But the simple fact of the matter is that if the family wanted to try to put all of the hurt that Meghan Markle had inflicted by doing this interview, and squirreling, and absconding away with Prince Harry. I guess we shouldn't call him Prince Harry anymore. He's not a prince, but with, absconding away with Harry, that's up to the family to make that decision. If they want to settle their differences and try to get back to being a family again, that's up to them. They don't owe it to anybody else to banish those two from their family for the rest of their life, because at the end of the day, they are a family, and they have the right to make this right if they so choose. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage it. But of course, there was a large segment of the British public for whom that didn't seem to be good enough. Those are not a bunch of people that I think that I would want to have in my family. Not a bunch of people I think I'd like to sit down to Thanksgiving dinner with. So then there was the second wave. And so now, the first bunch of people have come in, and they've targeted Meghan Markle, and they're wrong. And now the second wave of people come in, and now suddenly it's hashtag KK Kate. Not too hard to figure out where they're going with that. And so now the whole thing was that, oh, she's bullying Meghan Markle, and Meghan's just there to mourn. She's just there to mourn with her family, and Kate is making it hard on her. And they would pluck literal snippets of video that were literally seconds long, and you can't even tell what the hell is going on. You can't tell because there's not enough information there. You can't see what happened, before this 3, 4, 5 seconds of video. You can't see anything afterwards. They're trying to kind of splice out the tiniest little interactions between the two, put them under a microscope, and say that it proves that Kate Middleton is horrible because of the way that she's treating Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle, who's just there to mourn the Queen because she cherished Queen Elizabeth so much, and it was such a treasured person to her, which, as a matter of fact, we happen to know to be so much absolute nonsense. Whatever Meghan Markle, whatever her relationship may have been with the Queen, let's just say that it was quite obviously not at all congenial. It was not even congenial, let alone was it familial, to sit there and suggest that Kate Middleton is some kind of villain for just existing in the same place where Meghan Markle, of all the things that she might be doing, she's definitely not mourning. She might be supporting her husband while he's mourning, but she is definitely not mourning herself. And to suggest that Kate Middleton is some kind of monster for just being there, when her relationship with the Queen was quite clearly so much more congenial, so much more familial. that she actually did, love and respect her, her father's grandmother, her grandmother-in-law, if there is such a thing. Of those two, there is absolutely no doubt that Kate Middleton is absolutely the more authentic of the two. But then they had their second little wave of it, and then a third wave of Meghan Markle go home comes into it, and it just seems like it's a constant duel of people that really can't seem to keep their nose out of somebody else's family. And of course, as with so many other things on Twitter, it is a little bit difficult to try to figure out exactly how many people are involved in each of those kinds of, each of those trends, each of those waves. And I'm sure there's actually been more than 2 or 3 waves of it. I mean, I've really only noticed 2 or 3 waves myself. But it just seems to me like there is no asylum on earth that would be big enough to contain all of these people. But I think that we need to figure out some way to do it, because these are people that should definitely be isolated from society. I mean, royal family or not, public institution or not, that is still somebody's family, not your family, and to be fucking with it is, especially at a time like this, is absolutely reprehensible.